Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 168. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the world-celebrated and talented comic creator, Curtis Clow. Curtis.
Thank you for having me.
How's it going?
Excited to chat. It's good.
Our conversations are going from East Coast to West Coast, so if people are flying high enough in the plane, they're going to be able to hear us talk because that's the way it goes, right?
Exactly.
And so congratulations. This is you've knocked it out of the park. Your latest Kickstarter, which is already at, as we're seeing here, you wanted to get at least $14,000 and you've already over $38,000, almost 700 backers, and you still have 2 weeks left for Slightly Exaggerated. Wow.
Yeah, this is my 15th Kickstarter. This one was funded, I think, like under 24 hours. And yeah, it's just super fortunate to have a good following and to be doing this well. Like our goal was 14,000. I think we're already like over 200% funded. So
yeah. And so because you started doing Kickstarters back in 2017.
Yep.
And you did your first Kickstarter, which was a quick starter, which was a one-pager, and that kind of get your feet, you dip your feet in there. And I think that you said in a previous interview that the purpose of that is to not be afraid of Kickstarters and kind of learn how to do it. And you are now been doing this now full time. You are full-time comic creator for the past 3 years. You've been doing you've been making your own comics now as a writer and a creator for full-time job now for 3 years, correct?
Yeah. Well, you did your research. You saw that first Kickstarter. That was a really small one. I think we had, it was like 12 backers or something. It was like really small, a couple $100 for the goal, but it was just to learn Kickstarter and get my feet wet. And then a few months later, I came back with like the first comic Kickstarter. But yeah, I quit the day job almost 3 years ago. So full time for 3 years now almost.
Right. And you finally have moved out of your studio apartment now too.
Yeah, I'm in a one bedroom now, right next door. Right next door. And a lot more storage for books and stuff because I'm still doing all the shipping myself. But yeah, right. It's a big difference.
Right. And what I love it, you mentioned too, and you mentioned too, is that that you've been really fortunate and you admit gratitude, which I think is humbling, and it's also inspirational at the same time, that you've been able to connect with, you said Scout Comics and also Dark Horse Comics now, with your fully produced comic books. So before we jump in and talk about Slightly Exaggerated in Beastlands, and as I say, Beastlands, I read it. That is as you lovingly put it, it's a cross between Pokemon and Game of Thrones. Like, it is just there's some pretty adult action in that
definitely
in that thing. But kind of give people a little bit of background first about how you kind of got into being a full-time comic creator.
Yeah, I guess I always wanted to make a living doing something creatively, and fell in love with comics in like my late teens, early 20s. So I just knew that would be where I would focus my energy and try to get better at the craft of writing comics. And I started launching Kickstarters back in 2017, like you said. And now I'm on my 15th Kickstarter, and that's grown to like getting some freelance work, writing for some games. I'm getting this Dark Horse deal and a Scout Comics deal with Wild Cosmos, Dark Horse with Beastlands, and right now I'm pitching just like some of my dream publishers and stuff. So it's all just it takes time. Like they always say, comics is a long game, and it's definitely a long game, and it takes time. But stuff's finally starting to happen. Like I guess I'm maybe 5 years in or so. And yeah, I mean, I definitely show gratitude because there is like a proponent of luck in all this, like just lucky that Dark Horse happened to see Beastlands and like it, and just lucky to like definitely hardworking and trying to get better at my craft. And I think you have to look at your stuff critically, and your stuff has to be at a certain level for these publishers to be interested. But there's always the luck of just the right people seeing it, and getting signed just takes so much luck, like pitching up the ladder at these companies.
And you've been really, you've been also, as you said, really fortunate to find some incredible artists as well.
Oh yeah,
for this.
Yeah.
So for the folks that are listening who are also looking at, saying, Curtis, this is awesome. You got some great artists. How did you find such amazing artists to connect with?
Spending way too much time on social media and these art websites like ArtStation and Behance and all these, and reading other indie books off Kickstarter. Like if you back a Kickstarter anthology, you'll just like, you're gonna see tons of great artists that might be available and might be like indie artists, so a better chance you could work with them. But it's like for these stories, I always have like a specific art style in mind. So I'm always looking for the like I'm pretty picky about the artists I work with, and I'm looking for a certain style for these stories, and I kind of have it in my head. And then once I find the artist, I know. And then, but then there's also a proponent of luck. Like they have to be available, and like a lot of these artists are way too busy. So sometimes
Mm.
you're waiting months for them to be available if you're patient enough, or if you're not patient, then you have to find another artist.
And as you said too, is like once you kind of find an artist, how's that conversation go? It's like you say, listen, I'm doing 6 issues here. I'm doing 4 issues here. Can I count on you to be available all four? Or is that something like a when you sit down and do a contract with them, do you have it based off of a series of issues, or it's a one at a time
It's
issue?
all always different. Like you definitely have to come forward, like look professional, have like a pitch ready and an outline ready for, you want to let them know how long this is going to be, because they could
Mm,
potentially be working on it for years. Like we've been working on Beastlands for since 2018, late 2018, so it's been a while. Especially with Kickstarter, it's just such a slower rate of working on comics. Like they're going to be working on this for much longer, and an artist, it takes them so much more time to like draw all these comics compared to a writer. um but yeah, so you just touch base and like see what their availability is, see how long of a series do they want to work on. Do they just want to work on like a mini series, a graphic novel, or are they looking for something longer? And then you let them know if it's going to be co-owned between the two of you, or if it's just freelance for them.
mm.
um
And so talk to us as an example for Slightly Exaggerated, which I was fortunate enough to read issues 1 and 2, and the so a few questions for you is the we'll talk about the kind of the meta plot of the storyline so far. You have some pretty interesting, and I gotta say, so you grew up in the '90s,
yeah.
so that puts you in your mid 30s, right? Is that?
No, I turned 30 this year.
Oh, you turned 30 this year.
Yeah,
Okay, all right. Uh, so you're a little too young to go through a midlife crisis, and then you talk about some issues of like of life and mortality and things in here as you're
just
writing
I guess you
this.
could just call it a full life crisis. I don't know. Not midlife, just entire life.
so so talk to us a bit about Slightly Exaggerated. You have some great visuals that are happening in this. So I'm curious with you, is that, did you come up with the world first, or did you come up with the storyline first?
Oh man, probably a mix of both. Like I definitely had this idea. Once I saw Pius's art, I think from a different indie book, I contacted him, and he was one of those artists that I knew he just had to draw this series. I think I waited like maybe like a few months to a year, like for him just to be available, and that's how much I wanted to work with him.
Mm,
And I knew he'd just be perfect for this over the top fantasy world with flying sea creatures, talking animals, this weird tree lady, just all this weird stuff in this world. And then I just thought it'd be so fun to like pair this over the top world with like a world with a story that has so much more deeper meaning. Like you said, it's about death. It's about dying treasure hunter who wants to be remembered and doesn't wants to leave a legacy and just doesn't want to be forgotten. It's about questioning what you've been told. So I just always thought it'd be fun to like pair these two very different things.
mm. And so, as you say, you've had some several, very successful and very different worlds that you've set up. Talking about Beastlands earlier, and then also here Slightly Exaggerated. And the running theme that you say that you have is kind of this magical fantasy setting in a lot of places, where you don't rely a lot on the science of things. Basically, I don't know if it's like this. There's a lot when you build a world. How important is explaining the why behind the world that you've created, and how much do you just allow the readers to just accept the science behind of what you put in the backgrounds of these things?
I think you as a writer have to know these things, but you don't necessarily have to over explain it with exposition to the
Mm,
readers, if that makes sense. Like that's my favorite kind of fantasy and favorite kind of like storytelling is where you're not hitting the reader over the head with like how this world works, but you're kind of seeing hints. Like even that page that you see on Kickstarter now, you see her throw up this lantern and then you see this manta ray bite it and then she's riding it. So you kind of like gain an understanding of watching these actions of how some stuff in this world might work, but I'm
mm.
not like just trying to overly explain it, if that makes sense.
Right, it does. So, do you was this something that you've mentioned before? You have some really good, check it out on YouTube. You also have some really good writing tips and stuff for people as well. Was this something that you've learned over the years of you writing comics, or is this something that you have always been able to do to show and not tell?
Probably learn and get better at it. Like I think with every
Right.
new series, I think you're just improving at your craft and getting better as a writer, especially like printing it and seeing it in print and you can like read it and see where you might have made mistakes and can get better out of it. But I mean that's something you always hear, show don't tell, like as a writing tip. And I guess it just makes sense. I look at like what kind of fantasy do I like? What kind of comics do I like? Like I really love the new series Step by Bloody Step and Coda and Isola, and I think those stories all do a good job of kind of just throwing you in the middle of these weird fantasy worlds. And you're just kind of on this trip with these characters. And it's all about these character decisions and these character arcs, but it's not so much of you're kind of like discovering the world with the characters.
Hmm. And what are some of the things that you've kind of learned as you've been writing comics that you wish that somebody told you 5 years ago about creating comics?
That's a good question. I mean, working with editors helps. Like before you ever start paying for art or finding an artist, like refine that idea to get it the best you can be on your own. Before you ever get art for it, and even contact an artist. Like there's so much prep that goes into writing, like outlining and like that story structure, all of that stuff. I feel like you can just, if anything, spend more time on that stuff to make sure you have a solid story before moving on.
Right. And I gotta say too, I'm also gonna promote your Patreon page. You have, for those that are interested in writing comics and writing, and as I say, it's, the proof is in the pudding. You have had 15 successful Kickstarters. You are already on this one that we're looking at right now. You're knocking on $40,000. You almost have 700 backers. It's a safe bet to say you know what you're talking about. So if anybody's interested, Curtis does have a $10 per month tier where you can see outlines of scripts and some and it's a great place to learn how to write comics. For a mere $10 a month, you'd be able to kind of get in. And I mean, you have other levels. You got your blog at $2. You got your early comics at 5. You got 5 levels already. You got different ones on there as well. But I would say too, for those that are interested in writing comics, definitely check out the $10 a month Patreon level for Curtis on
Thank
here
you.
too. You know, uh, it's as I say, it's for those that are interested. I think this would be a great place to check out as a starter for those who are interested in writing comics. Uh, and what would be something that people could expect on that level?
I post like the PDF of comics and stuff, and then like a Q&A where you can like ask me any questions. Always happy to help other creators who are newer. I get a lot of questions from them, and I don't always have
Mm,
the time to answer them on social media and stuff. So this is kind of a spot where if you ask me stuff that you'll get an answer for it. And then I post like script PDFs and pitches and stuff like that.
right. And talking about the pitches, which is I've been uh, following Kickstarters for a while, and I find something that you mentioned in here in a previous interview was that talk to us a bit about how you've been able to connect with publishers with your comic books. A lot of folks have always felt that you either have to go out and find a publisher or do it on your own, but you've been able to find a way to find a successful marriage between both independently publishing and connecting with places like Dark Horse and Scout Comics.
Yeah, I just think we live in a lucky time where we have these platforms like Kickstarter where you can own everything and self-publish it, and then you always have the opportunity to also sign with these publishers and get out in the direct market. So you're kind of like hitting those both different markets. I think those are very different audiences from Kickstarter to the direct market and even like conventions. So I'm always open to that stuff if it's anything I put on Kickstarter. But it's also just like I said, like a component of luck for sure, where
Hmm.
just the right people have to see it. Like a Scout, I pitched to them and they were interested, and then Dark Horse just happened to see it and contact me. And a lot of it is going to that the convention grind, like going to the different conventions, meeting editors and publishers there. That's a big part. I mean, with COVID, there was no conventions for a few years there, but now that they're back up, just you got to get out there and grind to all these big conventions.
Hmm. So you do bring up a good point about conventions. Do you see we're in this? I optimistically call the point we're in now as a pre-post pandemic era. What are some of the things that you feel as though as a comic creator that we've learned over the last 2 years uh, about how to access comics and how to promote your work? Because the last 2 years during COVID, you've still been extremely successful in producing work.
Yeah, I was lucky that when comic shops closed and conventions were gone, that people still use Kickstarter. Then you even saw these bigger creators using Kickstarter, like Scott Snyder and Keanu Reeves. Weirdly enough, so I think all of that, these other people using Kickstarter, only helped bring more people to Kickstarter. And Kickstarter never really died down. Like it's all online, so you never had to shut down like comic shops and bookstores and conventions had to. So Kickstarter just kept growing. It feels like, and it feels like it only got bigger over the past few years.
And did you feel as though you did bring up conventions? Well, did Kickstarter in a way and social media kind of replace conventions, or do you still feel there is a place and there's an importance to actually physically going to locations and
Yeah,
tabling?
I don't think it replaced it at all. I think it's a different experience, different
Mm.
market. There's been a little bit of crossover where I'll have like an email list out at these conventions, and like I've been contacted by a few people that signed up, and then now they're telling me that they've backed their first Kickstarter because of me and supporting my work on there after finding it at conventions. But I think so much of it is a different market. If anything, conventions is probably more similar to like the comic shop market, where people are going there looking at the artist alley, looking at indie books. But it's important to go there in person and just connect with potential like fans and stuff. And then you're meeting these editors at these publishing companies that you might know them from like social media and stuff, but you don't really know them. You've never had a conversation with them until you got to like meet them face to face and kind of connect with them more there.
Mm. No, is your titles? I'm just kind of curious. Is there um like a Clower verse? Is like do you are they all part of the same shared universe? All your
No,
stories?
no, I don't think so. I've never really thought about that, but yeah, no, I think they're very different worlds, and I think about these like world building rules for all these different worlds. So I don't think that would really make sense if they connected.
And I'm curious as a have you thought about also like utilizing uh, different genres and like for instance like tabletop role playing games at all with any of your worlds or anything or
Oh, for sure. Like I'm a big fan of board games and card games and stuff. So I've been trying to see if I can adapt some of these comics to like a card game or something. It's just hard. Like comics are already so much time, so it takes to as somebody who's never designed a game before, it's hard, and I want to make sure it's good before putting it out. But obviously, like on Kickstarter, games and card games, board games are all big on there, so it'd be cool to launch one day for like one of these series.
Right. I was
It's a
thinking
dream.
about
One
that.
day we'll see. It has to be good enough. Like I don't want it to be. You know, you want your game to be good.
Well, like for instance, like you said it earlier too. It's like Beastlands. That would be, there must be some sort of
Yeah,
Pokemon inspired card game for that.
yeah. That's the one I've been working on for a while. It's not there yet, and hopefully it'll get there one day. We'll see, and I could launch a Kickstarter for it. And I mean, I already know that we can connect it to the Beastlands world, so it has that audience, and we could get some awesome art for it. But I just have to play test the crap out of it to make sure it's decent.
Right. So let's talk about slightly exaggerated now. And as I say, this is amazing that you've had like almost 700 backers on this. And you did say in a previous interview that you always like to experiment with new things with each Kickstarter. Uh, did you try something new with this one?
For this one, I'm running a little bit of ads. I've done that in the past, but I'm probably ramping it up for the first time, and it's something I just don't know much about, and just am always learning. But
Okay.
for this one, I kept it pretty straightforward. Like we have the collector's box at the higher tiers. We have the three variant covers. I kind of found a system that's kind of works for me, so I'm just trying to do more of that now. Besides, like the
Right.
ads is probably the only new thing for this one.
Oh, okay. So this one here is some people can get issues 1 through 4 if they want to, but this one's really primarily looking at issues 3 and 4, correct?
Yeah, this is to fund issues 3 and 4. Those are the last 2 issues of the series that we don't have made yet. So this funding will all go towards printing those and paying for the comic art. But for anyone new, yeah, issues 1 through 4 are all available here, digital
Mm.
or print.
And I like what you did here too. Is this is another really cool thing that I haven't seen other Kickstarters do, which I really appreciate that you've done, is shipping costs money, and I think you said before that it costs just as much to ship 2 issues as it does 1 issue. So it's easier to support your backers by giving them 2 issues at once.
Yeah, it benefits the backers for sure because they don't have to pay, especially international backers. It's almost the same cost to ship one comic internationally as it is to ship two. So if they're willing to pay that extra for 2 issues now, then they're saving shipping in the long run. And then as a creator, just doing 2 issues in one Kickstarter just saves so much time. You don't have to go through that full 30-day process of running a Kickstarter, getting the money, paying the
Mm,
artist. You're just getting it all now. And as long as you can manage the funds and pay the artists and then print the books with the funds, then it's just a much easier process and quicker. It's all about like Kickstarters take up so much time, and even if you're
right.
like really on top of it, it's hard to run 4 Kickstarters in a year, which I've hit in the past. So just trying to like hit that mark.
And do you still? I'm kind of curious too. Do you still have that Kickstarter high or that Kickstarter anxiety, even though you've been doing it for 15 times? Or are you?
Yeah, I don't think that ever goes away.
Oh,
For
really?
sure. Yeah, the night before launching, always a little nervous. Like you just wonder, are am I still gonna get this lucky? Are people still gonna like my stuff and want to keep supporting me? And then the mid campaign, it's a little slower, but then I guess it's definitely after the Kickstarter is over, you feel a little burnt out and kind of like the come down after that 30-day high of seeing all the money and watching it go up every day. You still get that come down of back to normal life when you're not running a Kickstarter.
Right. Do you? And can you mention, because this is your full time job now, is where? How do you keep your motivation? Because now that how do you keep your passion involved in doing this day to day?
I guess I'm just ambitious and I want to tell cool stories, and I just constantly have new ideas for new stories, and then I'm getting opportunities to pitch at like some of my dream publishers. So it's like obviously I want to do my best work there. So it's just
Mm,
about balancing now that I'm getting some of this like freelance work and actually like getting to pitch to publishers. I have to balance that with this Kickstarter stuff, which will probably in the future. I still do all the shipping myself, and offhanding some of that extra work will probably free me up a lot and keep me from burning out, I guess, so I could have more time to work creatively and the actual like writing craft.
So, do you say, for instance, you have creating a hypothetical here? You have a fifth. title that you're working on, at what point would you then just be the creator? Like, here's my idea, and because you already hire out to for someone to do the art for you, would you ever be in a position where you would then just send outlines out and just hire writers to write for you as well?
No, I don't think so. Like
No.
I don't see myself ever publishing other writers' stuff or hiring writers to write story. Like these are kind of like my babies that I want to
Mm,
write. And yeah, like if I don't have time for it, then I just can't get to it. But I'll save it and hopefully get to it one day. But yeah, I don't think I would ever do that.
so that's your that's a sacrosanct thing for you. Like, you will always write your own stories.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, all right. And would you ever, at that point then too, as you mentioned, like working with different publishers, would you ever put yourself out to be hired to write for other people's IPs?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, just like creator owned comics is definitely my passion and what I love. But at this point in my career, like making a living and having money for rent and like you can't beat getting paid to write comics. So if any publishers wanted me to like write their IP and it was just a work for hire gig, it's you're getting paid to write comics, which is cool. And then it's practice. Like you're getting paid to just get better at your craft. And then you could take whatever you learned working with those editors and work that you got paid to do. You can take that back into your creator own stuff and we'll probably only make it better.
Right, right, yeah. Uh, and you say you have, so those that already have issues 1 and 2, they can get the digitals 3 and 4 at that pledge level of $12, which is amazing, because look at this, you already have 129 backers for this, so that's 129 people who have already backed issues 1 and 2.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of cross pollination from all my series. So they might have backed like Beastlands or Wild Cosmos or my new one, Majestic, and then read the previous issues there or the other slightly exaggerated Kickstarters. So now this is just all like returning backers that are just here for the new issues.
Right. And so then you have, for 24, you have 1 through 4 PDFs here, so that means you have 99 new backers who never read issues 1 and 2 of Slightly Exaggerated.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, they could be like brand new to me, or maybe they've like read my other series and just haven't read Slightly Exaggerated. That's the good thing about
Right.
Kickstarter. You get so much cross pollination from all the different series and that you launch.
And you have and I love what you did here with the early bird. The idea that you said, what you said in a previous interview is that you decide just to have a limited amount, not a limited time, but a limited amount of backers who can access that. And we see right here on this one right here that you have that your early bird for issues 3 and 4, you got one left now
Yeah,
out of
so I do
180.
that because people are always canceling pledges or adjusting like to different tiers. So if somebody adjusts to a different tier, then if you keep it limited, then it'll open up one spot. So I think that one somebody actually adjusted to like a higher tier, so it opened up that spot. So now somebody else
Oh,
can hop in
okay.
there now. So that's the benefit of like keeping it limited rather than like timed.
Right. That's a really great. Did you so is that something you kind of discovered on your own, or did you see
Yeah,
that from
no, just on my own, experimenting. I think
Wow.
at first I started doing timed early birds and then adding in the limited like component, and then now I feel like this works the best in case anybody does drop out, cancel their pledge, then somebody might get lucky like halfway through the campaign if they still have that early bird available.
So is that something that that's a great tip that you should be are you actively sharing that with some of
Yeah,
your
I
colleagues?
share it with my friends for sure.
Yeah,
I
that's a
was
great
on a
idea.
call with a friend the other day telling him to do early birds and stuff. So
Right. And so those that wanting to, so those that who have the physical copy, then the collectors, the Slightly Exaggerated issues 3 and 4, that they get issues 3 and 4, the PDF, plus the collector copies of the physical copies.
yeah, they get the PDFs, includes that, and then we do the collector's ones, which are only out of 1,000. They're all numbered with foil stamping, and the logos got like a nice foil finish also.
Wow, and so that's basically $20 for each one,
Yeah,
including the PDFs. Wow, that is.
And they
And
come
like,
out really
and
nice. Like, it's expensive for a single issue, but, like, the quality is there where, like, I don't think you'll find, comics with this kinda quality, like, in a regular comic shop.
right, and you said I remember you saying that before too. Is so what would be your recommendation for folks who are looking at, saying, "Hey, Curtis, you know what? I, I was lucky enough. I got an artist. I'm ready to publish. Where do you find such great actual publishing houses
Yeah,
like that
I
actually?"
I print with, Print Ninja, so you can check out their site,
Okay,
printninja.com, and I really like them. Like, I've used a different printer in the past, but now I exclusively use Print Ninja, so I'm always recommending it. And they have like so many different customizable options. They have like an instant quote on their site where you can see the cost of like the quantity or with the different options you choose. And their
mm,
customer service is great. Like, I don't have any issues with comic shipping with like dings or anything. Like, they're always like in good quality and don't have any defects. So can't recommend them enough.
okay, Print Ninja. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have so also here too is I love that great idea about the the early bird. And so you have for the variant. Talk to us a bit about the variant
Yeah,
collectors.
so I started doing probably on my last like Beastlands campaign, I started doing 3 variants for each issue. So that tier right there comes with the collector's version and some of the variants, and then I have a third variant that we do super limited. It's only available from the add-ons, and
Okay.
so that cover right there in the background, that's one of the like variant C's that's only available as an add-on. There's only going to be 100 copies of those ones printed, so each issue 3 and 4 has like that limited variant that's only for add-ons.
Oh wow. Okay. And then what's talk to us about the acknowledgments
You can
tier.
get your name printed in the back of the book. So you see that a lot in Kickstarter books where you're thanking backers. So this is just a tier for anyone who wants to have their name in the back, and it's just on the thank you page. So
Hmm. Wow. And cool. And then you got all the oh, that is a heck of a deal right there. For $61, you get slightly exaggerated issues 1 through 4, Beastlands 1 through 7, and Wild Cosmos 1 through 3. So that's 14 comics for $61.
yeah, it's a nice. That's kind of crazy to say it out loud. Like, I didn't even realize I had that many issues of my own stuff finished. But I guess it's a pretty good deal. Like, that's if you want to read all of my stuff besides Majestic. That's my other series that we're still in production, so it's not on there. But if you want to read all my stuff, it's all right there.
Wow. Okay. Nice. And then you also have uh on here the early bird for slightly exaggerated, which is all the PDFs plus the collector's editions of 3 and 4 and the normal editions of 1 and 2. Is that
Yeah, I don't like to say collectors for 1 and 2 because I know we're sold out of the collectors for 1. I think we still have a little bit left for 2, but I can't like
mm,
guarantee you'll be getting the collectors for that one. It's mostly like the only way to guarantee you would get the collectors is if the back like on the current Kickstarter, because like I said, we only do 1,000 copies for each of the collector's edition.
okay? Okay. Wow. So and then you have and like and as you say, you could people are so talk to us a bit about how you came up. You said earlier you had a pretty standard tier system that a pledge tier system that's been working really well for you in the past. What were what do you see normally as someone is looking at doing Kickstarters? What would be some of your advice to them at how many tier levels would you recommend for them to start off with?
Keeping it simple probably is always good. Like if you're newer and launching your first series, making sure you have them spaced out, like your digital version, standard version, maybe variants,
Mm,
maybe all the comics if you have a few issues, all for that series, and then maybe another step up would be all your other series if you have anything else done. And then if you have like a few premiere items, you can throw in at like the higher level. Like I think for us, it's like I think around the 150 mark is like the collector's box and stuff, just for like the
mm,
super fans that want something extra. It's
right.
always good to have that, but also look at like what you want your average pledge level per what you want your average pledge per backer to be. That's a really important number. So try to get an estimate of what you want that to be for your current Kickstarter. If it's just an issue 1 or issue 2, it'll probably be lower. If you have more issues done, you could get that average pledge level a lot higher, and that's an important number because that kind of dictates like how successful and how much money you'll be getting from your campaign.
Right. And so one of the things that you do really well, and you've done this with your previous Kickstarters, is your collector's boxes. Um, Talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah, they are like a pretty premier collector's box that is like sturdy cardboard, and it's got art printed on there. And it's got like a foil finish for the logo. It's got a
Mm,
ribbon and a magnetic closure, and they can fit about 10 comics. They're 8 by 12. And there's really nice boxes that people like. They're expensive to make and a pain to ship, but people like them, and people buy them. So I'm going to keep making them for now. Um, but yeah, I mean, I can't complain. If people are buying them, then it's like you're kind of you got to keep it going.
right. And do you have, was that something you get through Print Ninja as well, or is that some a
No,
different
that I'm
place?
working with a different outlet that's just making these boxes. I think it's a
Okay.
company called Deluxe Box. But yeah, not through Print Ninja for that one.
Okay. And so with that, with your collector's box, you can also get a sticker pack and um uh Gisli print. Did I say that right?
No, it's I just actually learned how to pronounce it. It's called Zikle. I
Zikli.
think I have one in front of me from a different series, but it's like a really premier high quality print that has like a textured paper, and like the colors are super bright. And maybe I don't have one, but yeah, they're really nice prints. Like it's like one of the most high quality. It's a French word, but really nice prints.
Okay.
You got to think of like shipping when you're getting these higher levels. You got to think of the weight of everything. So I've done like enamel pins and cases in the past, but those are just a pain to ship. And so if you can do stuff like stickers, trading cards, Zikle prints, or any other prints, then it doesn't weigh that much, and it makes shipping a lot easier for fulfillment.
Right. And you do have an example of one of your
Oh,
collector's
there we go. Yeah,
boxes.
that's how our Beastlands boxes came out. They're really nice.
Right. And so how many issues is going to be slightly exaggerated?
This first story is just this four issues, just a limited miniseries.
Okay.
We're playing it like I left the ending open so we could continue if we want. I would have to talk with my co-creator Pius to see if he still wants to, draw another issue, and then we'd have to plan it out. But it's definitely the possibility that we could continue this or work on something else.
Now, I'm kind of curious. I know that parents never have a favorite child, but is there a world that you've created that you'd be really interested in going back to? Like, I just really want to tell more stories in this particular world.
Yeah. Like you said, you can't have a favorite child, but I mean, slightly exaggerated. I would love to return to. I think we've like already built the foundation for such a fun, over the top world that it'd be fun to return to and tell like a different story in this world with maybe different characters. But Beastlands is another one that I think is just very original and fun, and like I think there's so much other stories in other parts of the world where we could sell future stories in the world of Beastlands or with different characters.
Hmm. And so you did mention too that Beastlands now is going to be released with Dark Horse Comics.
Yeah, it'll be out next month. That's issues 1 through 5. They'll be putting in a trade.
Wow. Okay. Uh, Talk to us a bit about that. Say, how did? And you mentioned earlier that Dark Horse basically kind of discovered you on Kickstarter.
Yeah, they saw my stuff on Kickstarter or social media, and made a connection, reached out, and I think we ended up signing the deal like before the pandemic even started. So it was quite a while ago, and it just takes so much time for these things to come out. We had to finish the issues on Kickstarter, and then they wanted a lot of prep time for like marketing. And now we are finally almost there, where it'll be out in comic shops in 3 weeks on June 15th, and then the bookstores and Amazon and everything on the 28th of June.
And so, is that something where is that they would normally look at looking at miniseries like this and not an ongoing series? Is that a better option for Dark Horse to reach out to independent creators like that?
Yeah, and just think that Kickstarter is starting to like people are starting to look at Kickstarter comics different, and they're seeing that there's quality there. So I think a lot of these companies are going to Kickstarter to sign books. Like Scout Comics always has. That's where they get a lot of their stuff from. But now you see Dark Horse and Image and other companies also signing stuff that was originally just from Kickstarter. So it's always, I think it's always just nice to have like an extra release of the books that many people didn't read. Like even like a really successful Kickstarter would be like 1,000 backers, but that's like nothing compared to the numbers you would get in the direct market from comic shops and bookstores. So it's always
Mm.
nice to have that extra release in that different market. And yeah, and it's just signed for right now. We just have this first volume signed for issues 1 through 5, and then we can still continue kickstarting. Like we've already done the Kickstarter for issues 6 and 7. And if everything goes well with sales and stuff, hopefully they'll sign the second volume. But either way, we're going to keep kickstarting and continue the series.
So, what? Because I'm sure I'm sure when Dark Horse reached out to you that you weren't on an island by yourself. Like you probably went out and asked advice for some colleagues. It's like, what were some advice that you received about before you actually signed a contract? That some advice that you got from
Yeah,
folks.
these are my babies, like we said, and I wanted to make sure it was creator owned. So to like make sure the deal is creator owned, like Dark Horse doesn't own the IP at all. We have complete ownership, and we have the media rights. We have everything still. So it's a great deal where we get to get out in comic shops and work with a great publisher who has a history like Dark Horse,
Mm.
and it'll help get the book's name out there and our name out there. And then we still own it, and we could still go on Kickstarter. We did like a soundtrack Kickstarter for Beastlands where we're working with a composer. That's just all us separate
Oh,
from Dark
that's
Horse.
awesome.
Yeah, that one was back in February, but you can hear the theme song he made on YouTube if you type in Beastlands theme song. It's really good. You can see like the Budapest Orchestra play the song. It was a really cool opportunity. Like I never thought I
Wow.
would have a theme song for one of my comics, but a guy named Nolan reached out to me. He's a composer. He's worked on like some Star Wars stuff, and he just was a fan of the series and wanted to make a soundtrack. And his stuff is awesome. So I was really lucky.
So what is so now that this has happened, where are you? And you mentioned that you're actively looking at getting some other publishers. Are you? How does this change your creative process? Are you now at a point where you are making IPs that you think other publishers might want? Are you making IPs that you still are stories that you still want to tell?
Always stuff I want to tell. You got to stay true. You can't just be trying to get a cash grab and making stuff. But of course, like some of these publishers might like cater to a specific type of story, like sci-fi or fantasy. Like that's still pretty much like exclusively what I write because that's just my favorite genres. So I'm always going to write those. But if a company might publish more fantasy stuff, then I might like I might cater a pitch that might be more likely for them to accept. Like you still have to think about that if you want your stuff to get accepted and you want to have success pitching. Like pitching is a whole new thing that I'm learning where you're making these pitches. And usually if I want to make something, I can just throw it on Kickstarter and it doesn't matter if I get a yes or no from all these publishers. But if you want to work with some of these like top tier publishers, you have to make a pitch package and send it to them. And like I said, like catering, like you don't want to do something just because it's popular and you think that it'll sell well, but do something that it's just smart to do something that to cater to their lineup. Like maybe they already have a few sci-fi books, so you probably don't want to pitch them like the same exact books. So you just gotta look at their lineup.
Right, right. At what level, as you mentioned, like that there's a level of luck and fortune, but also hard work. Uh, at what level were you delighted to get contacts with Dark Horse with Beastlands?
I mean, I would still be happy to like work with Dark Horse on anything new. Like I just think they're one of the top publishers, and they have so much history. Like I think it's a great home for Beastlands, and
Mm,
maybe they wouldn't be a good home for a different series, or maybe they wouldn't be like maybe a pitch wouldn't be good for them. But I think for a story like Beastlands, it's great there.
right, right. It does kind of fit, as you say, with what Dark Horse puts out. Uh, so really excited about Slightly Exaggerated. I love, as you said, the world you've created. There's some, I'm very curious about this. The idea of flying aquatic creatures, was that always in the cards with this story, or is that something that happened as you're writing the script?
That was always in the cards. Like, I just wanted to go, like, Beastlands is a much more grounded world, even though there's these, like, big companion beasts, but they don't have, like, any magical abilities, and if they have wings, they could fly, but for this one, I wanted to do just something completely over the top and, like, whimsical with, like, even her little sidekick there is a little talking frog named Winston, and then you
Right.
see the flying wheels and sea creatures. It was just, I just wanted to do something more, like, original that I haven't seen done in a while with, like, weird flying sea creatures and lots of other weird stuff.
And as you say that, and you as you also mentioned too that you find artists that would fit there. Do you have like a list of artists that you want to work with, but you're just trying to find the right story
Yeah,
to
definitely. Yeah.
tell?
I have a whole notepad in my phone full of like great artists I would love to work with one day, but it's also about finding a story that I think they could draw good and would like cater to their style. And then also just, a lot of these artists are so busy, and if they're really good, they're probably already on like a series with a top publisher or with one of the big two.
Hmm. Have you also been also like the reverse where some really good artists that you like reached out to you and say, "Hey, if you got a project, I would love to work with you."
Yeah, that definitely does not happen as much for writers. So it's very humbling and flattering when like I have had a few artists reach out to me that like possibly want to do series with me. So it's flattering because it rarely happens in that way in the reverse.
Right, that's awesome, man. I gotta say, Chris, I am excited. I'm really excited being able to sit down and talk to you about this. Um, Discovering your work is has been a genuine pleasure. I've been um, it, the 4 issues I read of Beastlands. I thought I was going to say I'm just going to take the entire afternoon and I'm going to sit down. I'm going to read it. I finished it within an hour because I was just enthralled by how the story happened. Your character development's amazing. The whole Joseph Campbell alien, hero's journey captured it, and I love the worlds you've created are so unique and so individualized. It's been, and it's as you, it's work that I've never seen before. Like as you say, it's hard to create new worlds, but you've been really successful in that. So
Thank you. I
congratulations to that.
appreciate all the kind words. That means a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, but listen, you gotta have to come back on. You have to come back
Definitely.
on when you do
Always
your,
down.
if you're promoting, if you've got, what did you say, 4 Kickstarters a year?
Yeah,
Was it
well, I mean,
again?
I've already done 2 this year with, the soundtracked one and now this one, so hopefully I can get 2 more in, like, we're looking at maybe another Beastlands one or to wrap up Wild Cosmos, so I'm
Right.
hoping if everything goes well, we could get 2 more in. It's a lot of work, but
Yeah.
definitely down to come
Yeah.
back on.
Yeah. Come back on. This has been great, Curtis. It's been a genuine pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was a fun interview.
You're welcome. So I did learn to say that it's a Clow as in wow. So
Oh, yeah, yeah, Clouds and WoW, yeah. A lot of people will
yeah,
go with, Clow, but,
I know I saw that other
I
one
think
you're on.
that's the first instinct for a lot of people.